Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 305 Insights. I'm your host, Alan Summerton, and today I have the unfortunate task of reviewing another Florida State game. It's always been a fun season so far. Florida State goes into Death Valley to face Clemson, one of the worst Clemson teams in the past 16, 20 years, and they proceed to lose 24 to 10. Now, there were some bright spots in this game. You see the influence that Deuce Robinson has in this offense. You saw the defense play with a little bit of fight, but again, the offense being inept doesn't allow for the defense to really capitalize on its performance. And this game was never really in doubt for Clemson, which is sad because they played that way. They made it difficult on themselves in this game. And the reason why I say that is their offensive game plan did not exploit the known weaknesses of Florida State. They did not go in there and try to exploit matchups against Florida State linebackers. They just ran a pretty vanilla, methodical offense, and unfortunately, it was enough to win the game. I mean, they only averaged 2.7 yards a carry. Cade Klubnik only had 221 passing yards. You outgained them 360 total yards to 319. But again, it's not about yards, it's about points. And yeah, this game was just ugly. The part that is fascinating is this was a clean game by Florida State up until the second half, and all of a sudden they finished with 5 penalties for 50 yards, and a lot of them were timely. Like Michael Pettis, after Sam Singleton got that first down, he got called for the hands to the face, brought it back. LaWayne McCoy got called for a personal foul to make it third and forever. It's just this team finds a new way to lose every week. And even when you think there are potential for bright spots, the team just lets you down. Tommy Castellanos was brought in as a dual threat quarterback to fit Gus Malzahn's system. The problem is, and we've said this multiple times on this podcast, if Tommy is throwing a lot, that means you're going to lose the game. There should be an inverse of what the pass attempts were and the rushing attempts were. Because Tommy threw the ball 43 times and we only had 26 rushes as a team. And 11 of those were by Tommy himself. Sam Singleton had 6 carries. Chroma had 3. Sawchuk had 1. Like, it's just, your running backs really just aren't touching the ball. It's just disheartening. I mean, it's just the same song and dance over and over again with a Mike Norvell-led team. They, for some reason, really enjoy kicking the ball off to their opponents and starting off the game down 7-0. And then they consistently proceed to go out there and go 3 and out, because that's the downfall of a Gus Malzahn offense. You're either going to get some chunk plays here and there, you're going to control the clock, or you're going to have multiple possessions where you waste about 40 seconds to a minute of game time. And the defense is back out there. If we look at the breakdown, each possession in the first quarter, a minute 37, 4 plays, 17 yards. They had a fumble, 5 plays, 24 yards. But that only took a minute and 58. And then 3 plays, 8 yards, a minute 14. The first drive in the second quarter, 4 plays, 8 yards, a minute 18. Like, there wasn't a possession until the third quarter where they had over 2 minutes of game time possession. And then the best one was in the fourth quarter. You had 13 plays, 47 yards, took 6 minutes and 41 seconds, and you got 3 points out of it. Like, it's the feast or famine type offense isn't working. And the sad part is it's a necessity, because it comes down to the core principle of why this team has failed under Mike Norvell. And it is because a lack of recruiting and development. If you look at this team, how many homegrown players are on it right now that have been developed by this staff? And again, we said this in a few podcasts ago. Mike Norvell only has 2 homegrown recruits that he can point to, and Azaria Thomas and Joshua Farr that have been drafted by him. He's recruited over or roughly 99 high school recruits in his tenure here, and he can point to 2 successful examples of development. QB, transfer. Your leading rusher is a transfer with Tommy. Your leading receiver, Deuce Robinson, transfer, who, by the way, was a legacy recruit and you still couldn't get him. You had to get him to transfer in here 2 years after he was at USC. Randy Pittman Jr., transfer. Was your top 2 wide receivers. The only redeeming quality about this season is you're actually seeing some young guys play, like Sam Singleton Jr., Chroma, Mekhi Danzy. LeWay McCoy's been really stepping it up. He's probably been your most consistent underclassman outside of Danzy, and that's not saying much. But still, he had 4 catches for 46 yards against Stanford, disappeared against Wake, but it was a 42-7 game. Kind of just really controlled the game there. Clemson 4 for 46 with a touchdown. Against Miami, he had the touchdown. But there's just nothing to point to in terms of development, and it took you how many years to finally hit on some guys? Who's to say LeWay McCoy is going to stay? Mekhi Danzy's choosing between running track and field and playing football. On defense, Blake Nicholson was a prized 4-star linebacker recruit, and all you hear year in and year out how athletic he is. And he is athletic. He can cover a lot of space, but he has poor instincts. Jerry Wilson was brought in as a shutdown corner at the University of Houston, and he has been anything but that. We all know Earl Little Jr.'s shortcomings as a coverage safety. He's a great rover when he attacks downhill and all that. But the other aspect of being a safety is also being able to play coverage, and he's not able to do that. You hit on the Desir twins, but other than that, what's on the defensive line? You're finally transitioning Amari Williams to the defensive line. But is it too little, too late? There's nothing to look forward to this year after a 3-0 start, because you started losing the ridiculous. Like, you can understand the Virginia game, the UM game. That's fine. You're losing games, the trap game, and the team that has more talent than you. But losing the Stanford game, again, we record the podcast about how it's the end of Mike Norvell here at Florida State. But now it's just, you're not competitive. And you can't say after a week against Wake Forest being them 42-7 that you believe in your coach, and all these players are trying to clap back at the media, because they were accused of quitting against Stanford. And then come out and put this performance where you're missing tackles left and right on the first drive, and you're playing sloppy all game. You can't say that when Tommy is having an incredibly inaccurate game, because, again, he finished 23 of 43. And how many drops is Randy Pittman, Mr. Reliable, drops a crucial 4th down conversion that turns into a turnover of downs, and they score shortly after that. Jalen Lucas drops a ball. As inaccurate as Tommy may be sometimes, the wide receivers do still need to help him. It's just unfortunate as a Florida State fan, because the recruiting class is going to suffer. You're going to have to buy your way into the portal again. But the issue here is, what type of talent are you getting in the portal? Because what now is happening is these schools are entirely focused on retention now, because it's cheaper to retain your homegrown talent than it is to go out and buy needs. You can supplement where you're coming up short, but you can't just go, you're going to have to go and portal a whole new offensive line again. You know why? Because all the recruits, like Lucas Simmons, who's been 3 years into the program and is getting a hefty NIL check, is just a non-factor when it comes into coming into the games and playing. You're not developing anybody. You're supposed to use the transfer portal, again, to supplement shortcomings, not to build a team. Norvell never transitioned out of that. The cracks in the foundation, I'm going to hammer this point home no matter how many times I bring it up. The cracks in the foundation occurred in 2023. In 2022, you had a 9-3 regular season. You won the bowl game. You went 10-3. There was a void in Florida in general where you could have capitalized on Miami being down before Cristobal got things rolling there, before Billy Napier started taking recruits, and you weren't able to do that. And then you go 13-0, and you get snubbed from the playoffs, and you still can't secure a top 10 recruiting class. You're getting guys like Travis Hunter flipping from you after being committed for years. You're getting guys like KJ Bolden flipping to Georgia on signing day, Kadarick Falk flipping to Auburn for a new hire at the time in Hugh Freeze. You're just losing impact players left and right. The type of guys that you could have received here, they could win a championship. That's not even an exaggeration. They could win a championship with all the people who have decommitted from this team. And that's just, again, it's frustrating because this is Florida State. There's a standard, and that standard hasn't been met in almost 10 years at this point. The last year of Jimbo Fisher in 2017. And then you had the 2 years of Willie Taggart, and now 6 years of Mike Norvell. And the only reason he's still at the helm of this team is the financial commitment to let him go. Now, the rumors that I'm hearing from credible sources is Virginia Tech has offered James Franklin whatever he wants, but industry sources are saying that he's hoping the Florida State job opens up. Because if you remember his interview on College Game Day, after he was fired, he says he still wants to continue coaching and compete for national championships. Where is that the most logical spot? You look at the job openings now. Obviously, Penn State, he was let go from there. LSU, Florida, those are the consensus top 3 jobs. Then you have the likes of Oklahoma State, Virginia Tech, Auburn. Where is there a pathway for national championships? You could say LSU because, again, the talent, the resources. You could say that with Florida. And the problem is you're an incredibly deep conference in the SEC. I don't think when you compare like the Big Ten and the SEC, I think the top tier teams in the Big Ten are proving they're like, Ohio State's on a completely different level than everybody else right now. I think the SEC gets a lot of credit, more credit than they should. But again, if you go to LSU, you're going to have to battle the likes of Florida, Georgia, Alabama, year in and year out, just to try and reach the playoffs. Same thing at Florida. Florida, you're going to have to battle Georgia, Tennessee, and your out-of-conference schedule is always going to include Florida State. If Florida State opens up, what is the easiest job in terms of getting a pathway to a championship game? It's Florida State. That's not being biased. Look at the type of teams that are in the ACC. The top-tier teams are meant to be Florida State, UM, and Clemson. And then after that, you can mix in with Georgia Tech, Virginia, Louisville, every once in a while Pittsburgh, different things like that, North Carolina when they get rolling. But the top-tier teams are clear. Got to throw SMU in there too now. For, not top-tier teams, but for the second-tier teams. My thing is, if you're going to fire Mike Norvell at the end of the season, which unfortunately isn't a guarantee, why wait? I know Mike Alford came out already and said, we're going to evaluate this team at the end of the season. But in this cycle where you're not going to be the top tier job and you have the opportunity to get a coach like James Franklin, who I think, despite his shortcomings in the big game, is a certified program builder. It can establish the floor once again at FSU. You can make it an 8-4 floor. I don't see why you hesitate in doing that. I understand there's a financial commitment, but the finances are going to be much worse if you bring him back. FSU insiders are already saying that the renewals for next year are going out, and there are plenty of people who are sending that email to spam. There's rumblings that these big money boosters that FSU has, the people that they rely on, do not want to spend money on a team next year if Mike Norvell is at the helm. Why? Because FSU spends a lot of their NIL resources on the football team. Their football team is one of the more expensive ones when it comes to the rev share allocations of the 20 odd million dollars. FSU has one of the highest allocations to football in the country. And these are the results. You're 5-16 in your last 21 games? UConn has more wins in 2024 in the ACC. And they're not even in the conference. You're going 400 days in between ACC wins. This is Florida State, multiple national championships, a team that went years, 14 straight years in the top 5 consecutive. No one's ever done that. If there was a playoff back in the day, Bobby Bowden and FSU would have multiple championships. Jimbo Fisher comes in, wins a championship. This is one of the newest blue bloods in college football, but there's a rent to be paid to stay as a blue blood, and we've been bouncing checks for years. The concerning part is how long we've been in this hole and how long it's going to take you to get out. People have this perception that it's going to be a quick turnaround because of the NIL era. That can't be guaranteed, because you need to bring in someone who's going to recruit the state of Florida, who's going to recruit the South. And what are you selling at this point? If Mike Norvell comes back, you're not selling anything. You're selling a paycheck. That's why these teams are so expensive, because they can't build real relationships with these kids. And even if you do build a real relationship, you're just going to portal over them. So why would they come here? If you're Usman Chroma, I know you're probably, in all likelihood, not going to get the same amount of NIL money that you're getting here at FSU if you transfer somewhere else. But I'm sure the pitch to him was, you can be the bell cow here at Florida State, and we'll let you develop, and you'll eventually, as time goes on, we'll get more carries. That hasn't happened. And you know what? They brought in Gavin Sawchuk in the spring transfer portal. So you have Roy Dell Williams, a transfer. Gavin Sawchuk, a transfer, that were supposed to be the primary ball handlers this year. You have Keziah Holmes, a transfer. Even though he's been with the program for a few years, he was a transfer from Penn State. If you're a tight end, they brought in Randy Pittman Jr. If you're a wide receiver, they brought in Deuce Robinson, Squirrel White. I think Gavin Blackwell out of UNC, even though he hasn't really played. If you're an offensive lineman, they pulled it in Michael Pettis. They've pretty much pulled in everybody. Defensive line. Darrell Jackson Jr., portal. James Williams, defensive end, portal. Jerry Wilson, cornerback, portal. Earl Little Jr., safety, portal. Elijah Herring, linebacker, portal. What's going on here, man? It's Florida State. You should be rotating quality defensive linemen. The type of cornerbacks that you've been getting, why do you need to get Jerry Wilson? You've recruited a 5-star in Charles Lester. How have you not developed him? Kai Bates, how has he not been developed? Quindarius Jones, how has he not been developed? I know he's injured, but still, the point remains. I mean, what's been going on here? That's the part that bothers FSU fans. It's just been a slow, agonizing descent into mediocrity, and you think that you have a breath of life in that 2-year stretch where you go 10-3 and 13-1. But those are getting further and further in the rearview mirror, and they look like an anomaly. It's tough out there, folks, as an FSU fan right now. In the past, I've tried to have these rose-colored glasses and try to see things from a positive lens. But I'm just tired of doing that at this point. I can't say that it's cool seeing, Jabril Rawls develop. It's cool seeing the Desir twins play on the defensive line and look like an actual hit for this 2025 recruiting class. I can't say it's fun to watch Usman Chroma get his 2 or 3 carries and see how he runs, or Mekhi Danzy doing Mekhi Danzy things. There's nothing redeeming about this team. When I came into this season, as an FSU fan, this is really sad to say, when I came into the season, all I was focused on was how the kids were going to develop and see how they were being coached. Because the best I was expecting was 8-4, but 7-5 was more realistic. And the pathway that we may get to 7-5, I still don't see how it happens. I mean, you have the final home game of Virginia Tech, and then you play at NC State that they've always had trouble, and then you're at Florida. You never root for your team to lose, but it's incredible to see this fan base, how there's a faction of them who are rooting for this team to lose because they don't want any possibility of Norvell coming back in 2026. Apathy is turning into anger, and that's not something you want to see as an administration. You've already been, because The reason why you don't wanna see this administration is because there's already been an anger phase, and you're at apathy, and people are just so done with this program that their negative emotions are being spoken through via money. They're not gonna donate to this program because it makes them angry at how much they've fallen. They're not gonna buy season tickets because 'cause they're angry. This is the second level of angry, of frustration. It's not indifference anymore. People are going to make a statement, and it's not the statement this administration wants. That's it for today's episode, folks. You know the drill. You can find us on YouTube. Subscribe, like the videos, turn those notifications on. You can find us Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe there, rate us 5 stars, and you can find us on Spotify as well. Coming up, we'll have to do the college football rankings when they come out on Tuesday. I'll try to be on top of that one this week. Still have to dive into LSU, and we're going to do a review of the game as well. So hopefully a lot of content coming up, folks. Again, thank you for listening. Wherever you may be listening from, we greatly appreciate it. So once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll catch you next time here on 305 Insights. Have a good one, folks.